You welcome to the second hour of the Art Lewis Show on this Friday morning. It is an open phone hour, whatever you'd like to talk about, 989-752-6111. I want to take just a second to acknowledge someone. You just heard us talk about hockey here for the last hour. I just want to finish up on that because, as you may have heard in the news, the Saginaw Spirits head coach, Chris Lazary, has accepted a position with the University of Michigan as its associate coach for hockey. And we really wish Chris well. Uh, there are many things about Chris I like, but the one that stands out to me more than any is his family and how he has become a tremendous, tremendous family man and father of two beautiful daughters and a lovely wife. And they just exude family. You know, when you look at him, you say, boy, there is a cohesive family. And I've always admired Chris for that, aside from his coaching. I mean, I'm a layman when it comes to hockey. I don't know anything about hockey other than what I like to watch. But, you can spot a good coach, and the good coaches are spotted by how their players react to them. And Chris is just an outstanding guy. And I wish him well at the University of Michigan. And I texted him the other day and said, can't wait to see your name on a NHL bench someday because I think that's where he'll end up. But we do wish him well. All right, lines open for you at 989-752-6111. And Rachel starts us out in Bay City. Rachel, good morning.
Good morning. Hey, that was a really very cool last segment that you did with the hockey history and their program coming up. Wonderful for them. That's fantastic. Way cool, guys.
Yeah.
Also, heard the very moving tribute to Bill Hewitt. That was pretty cool.
Yep. Bill was a great guy around here for decades and decades, and truly will be missed.
Yeah. Yep, definitely the big shoes to fill there. I'm calling because Tennessee Congressional Representative Tim Burchett, a very, very impressive man. He is introducing new legislation. It is called the Protection Against Mass Surveillance Act to remove all government funding from all locations to implement flock camera systems. And he is encouraging everyone to call their legislators to encourage them to support the Protection Against Mass Surveillance Act. And I just want to tell everyone to do that. Get off your butt and call your legislators today to tell them to support the Protection Against Mass Surveillance Act.
I'd be surprised if it, I'm going to tell you straight out, I'd be surprised if it passes.
That's fine if you would be surprised about that. There are plenty who are very opposed to it. So that's all. I just want to call and say that.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Cool. All right. Thanks. Take care. You know, let's talk about that for a minute. Flock cameras. They were in the news recently this week because officers in some departments have misused them. Like anything else, anything can be misused. And certainly flock cameras, the information they have can be misused. Some officer trying to track his wife's movements and stuff like that. But they represent a very, very infinitesimally small amount of people that would misuse a system. What is the overall benefit of the system and what are the protections? Well, the protections are simple. First of all, it records nothing but a license plate. It doesn't see who's driving the car. It doesn't see any of that. It just sees a license plate. It stores it for 30 days, and it is automatically removed after that. On the 31st day, if a police department were looking to see where a license plate was, they wouldn't have it because it automatically purges the information when it's 31 days old. It is not a system that issues tickets. It doesn't do any of that. It just helps authorities enforce laws and keep you safe. And I understand there's controversy about anything that surveils us, but guess what? It's only doing it in very public places. The roads you drive. You have no expectation of privacy of your car when you drive on a public road. If a police officer follows you, he can do the same thing. He can get your license plate, and he can do far more with it than the flock can. And many police departments today have plate readers in their cars. So I'm not as worried about it as others are, and I understand the argument. I understand the concerns that come with something that does the kind of surveillance the flock camera does. But I think people ought to study the system a lot before they speak against it, because a lot of times they don't know what they're talking about. So I just thought I'd mention it because Rachel brought it up, and I'm glad she did. And we'll find out. I mean, there's a bill out there. Now, we'll see what happens. You never know. I mean, if there's enough pushback, who knows? Could be. But it is a system that is growing coast to coast. And you'll hear more and more about flock cameras in the future. And, of course, with that comes more and more abuse. Let's face it, as more and more departments and geopolitical entities put up flock cameras, there's more opportunity for somebody to abuse it. We understand that, and you'll hear the stories. But they don't, in my view, overshadow the significance of the tool for law enforcement, because it's doing everything in a public way. There are public intersections, monitoring public roads, photographing visual license plates. So there's nothing invading your privacy. They don't even see who you are. The camera does not show the driver. It doesn't show anything of the car other than the license plate. So we'll see what happens with this piece of legislation. Cam, hang on. We'll get to you next after these notes.
Gotta go.
We're back with you here on the Art Lewis Show, an open hour. Whatever you'd like to chat about, 989-752-6111. Cam is in Freeland. Cam, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Art. I had a completely different thought in mind for this call, but
Yeah.
the lady mentioned the license plate readers. And I know you will remember this incident. A number of years ago, I was working in Virginia. And on the very day and in the very area where I was working, a former TV show reporter, on-the-air reporter, tracked down a current TV reporter and his cameraman and murdered them live on air.
I do
And
remember that.
as he tried to escape, there were dozens and way more than that. There was 30 to 40 law enforcement camped out on the various interstates in the area. And the way they finally tracked him down is when they finally were able to get his license plate number, because people knew who he was and they knew who the shooter was, they were able to garner his license plate number. And when the state police troopers entered that license plate number into their reader, they were literally able to track his movements because he had already gone past them prior to them entering that information. They eventually tracked him down, cornered him, and he I think he killed himself, if I
Yeah,
recall
if I
correctly.
remember right. That's true.
So the license plate readers help take bad guys off the street too.
Yeah, and that was a
so.
very early version because they weren't pure license plate readers. I mean, they were cameras monitoring intersections and things like that that happened to also catch the license plate. Very different from the system today, but effective.
Yeah, and people need to remember that it isn't just Big Brother looking over our shoulder. A lot of times it can be used to take the bad guys off the street, and it did that day. So.
Well, that's primarily what it's for. It doesn't issue tickets. It doesn't issue tickets if you run a red light or if you're speeding. It doesn't do any of that. It's just a tool for law enforcement to help find the bad guys.
Yep, and it works when it's used that way.
Absolutely.
So hopefully, like you said, there's always going to be abuse, no matter what the item is. It can be abused, and that certainly can be. But when it's used the right way, it's very effective.
Absolutely.
Sometime in the future, you came to Saginaw in the mid-'70s.
Yes.
And I was wondering about your early career. Were you a disc jockey in New York, or where did you start out?
Well, I can tell you about it. I did not want to be in radio. I wanted to be a television director. I went to college for an entirely different subject, I went to college for chemical engineering, okay? But when I got out of college, I went to my dad, and I was very young when I went to college. I was 16, so I didn't have a lot of say in things. And I got out at 20, went to my dad, and I said, all right, I did what you wanted. Now it's my turn. And to which he said, yep, no problem. And I said, why didn't you tell me that 4 years ago? But anyway, I had an FCC license to operate transmitters as an engineer. And I also was looking for a directing job. And I had sent out resumes. I wanted to get out of New York City, and I sent out resumes. And the first place I got hired was in Clovis, New Mexico. And I went down there as a transmitter engineer and as a director, pushing buttons. And I was happier than a lark. I got in the business. I was there about 6 months. The guy that owned the station came into the dirty control and transmitter room that I was in and said, when you moved down here, did you bring a sport jacket? And I said, yeah, why? He said, well, you're going to go home and get dressed because you're doing the TV news tonight in a 6-hour radio show. I said, no, not me. I'm a button pusher. He said, well, you're 2,000 miles from home. I'm paying your salary. You're doing the TV news tonight. So that I literally backed into it and never went back into the control room. He wouldn't let me. I ended up on radio, did TV and radio down there for a while, and then went back east and been in radio ever since. Just fell in love with it.
Sometime in the future, when you have more time, I came to Michigan working in radio too with Bob Dyer.
Oh my goodness!
And
yeah.
I worked at a lot of small town radio stations in the deep South before I broke out and came to Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And we've all got these stories of mistakes we made on the air that got us in trouble, or guys that got fired.
You'll never hear me talk
way.
You'll never hear me talk about it.
Well, I was going to ask you if there was anything you could share.
Oh yeah,
I certainly got my stories. I was a bit of a rebel, so
I worked. Well, let's see. I worked in Clovis, New Mexico, and then I worked in a very small town in Pennsylvania, Lehighton, or Jim Thorpe, as it was known. And then I moved. Then I moved to Reading, Pennsylvania, and I was a programmer and rock jock, and I started doing talk there long before talk was popular. Did a half-hour Gab Fest. And from there, I moved into New Jersey and worked in New Jersey radio, a radio station in New Jersey that covered 3.5 million people. And I freelanced in New York City and decided at some point in time when I met my wife, we got married, and were having kids. We didn't want to raise them in the New York area. So I applied to Saginaw. I was looking. When I say I applied to Saginaw, I literally took out a Rand McNally map, closed my eyes, and put my finger down and landed on Saginaw. Knew nothing about it, but I had some requirements. I wanted a decent radio market, a TV market, but most important to me was an industrial market because I was doing voiceover work in New York City for industrial clients, and I wanted to continue that. And I came out here and I saw Steering Gear Division and General Motors, and then I saw Dow Corning and Dow with my degree, and I'm going, yeah, there's got to be work there. So we came out here. SGW fortunately hired me, and been here ever since in '74. And I was here about 6 months and started doing much of the voiceover work for Saginaw Steering Gear Division at the time. And I've done work for Dow Corning and others, many others. So it worked out well until I finally got tired of it back in the early 2000s. I said, enough of that. So that's the story in a nutshell. In things that I'm, regretting doing, I can't think of too many in my career actually, because I don't know the words. A lot of people used to say I was straight-laced, if you know what I mean. I wasn't one of the wild ones. I wasn't one of the wild ones. So.
Yeah, they would tell me things you can't do, and I would come as close to the edge as I could get sometimes when I was spinning records.
We all did that. I mean, I don't count that because that was every day. But I can think of. I was a bit of a daredevil growing up when I was young. I raced cars and I just would do anything. And one time in Reading, one of these thrill shows came to the fairgrounds. What was the fairgrounds? And we had them to the radio station, interview them and all that. And the guy said, "Hey, any interest in being part of the thrill show? We know you race cars." I said, "Well, yeah, what do you want me to do?" He says, "Well, we'd like to stage a head-on collision." I said, "Yeah, count me in." So I go out to the fairgrounds for this Daredevil show, and I'm the guest driver. And so I talked to the guy that I'm going to be running up against, and the actual design of the bit was to sideswipe these two old Studebaker cars, make it look like a head-on, but not really have a head-on. He and I talked about it and said, well, what happens if we hit headlight to headlight? We're crazy. And we did. 30 miles an hour each, so a closing speed of 60 miles an hour. We wrapped headlight to headlight and spun around like tops. Crowd went nuts. The guy that owned it came up to me later and he said, "You gave me a heart attack. What are you guys doing?" I said, "Hey, you got a thrill show. What do you want?"
Hey, that harkens back to those old fair things where they would run two locomotives head on.
Yeah, sure. Anything out of the ordinary and dangerous. That was the thing.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right. Listen, Cam, I appreciate the call. Good conversation. Appreciate it.
Great talking to you.
Same here. Thanks.
Have a great weekend, man.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye now. Yep, 989-752-6111.
Beautiful new floor.
And we are back with you on the Art Lewis Show. Back to our phones. Gene is in Saginaw. Gene, good morning.
Good morning. I'm just calling to try to get a phone number from you for, I think it's a rescue mission where you can donate pots and pans and dishes and stuff.
The Rescue Ministry? Is that what you're
That's
saying?
it, I think, yes.
Yeah.
You're always talking about it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're probably they're my favorite charity.
Okay.
Hang on a second, and I will get that for you. Because I don't have it off the top of my head.
No problem.
Let me do it this way, or see if it still does it. All right, hang on a second here, and let me look. Rescue Ministries. Okay. So, contact. Let's see what it says. Here is a phone number for you. Are you in Saginaw or Bay County? Saginaw?
Saginaw.
989 752 6051. And they take all of those household type donations because it goes into their impact services, which
Right.
places all these good things in apartments for people that have.
That's what I'm
graduated.
looking for.
Well, that
okay.
it's perfect.
Okay,
Yes.
that was 752-6051.
I do believe that's correct.
Thank you, sir.
All righty. Take care.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye now. Yeah, great organization. If you ever have, kitchen household items like that, furniture, anything, decorative items for a house, their impact service takes folks who have fallen on hard times and gone through the ministry and been housed at the rescue ministries, but then get back on their feet and they can afford an apartment. So the rescue ministries, through its impact services, completely furnishes the apartment. And all of the material comes from folks who donated like that. It's great. It's absolutely wonderful. So again, the number 989-752-6051. It's the City Rescue Mission, part of the Rescue Ministries of Mid-Michigan. You hear them regularly on WSGW because we do a couple of things. We do, of course, the big radiothon in December for the Rescue Ministries, but coming up very soon, as a matter of fact, might be in another week or so. Let me double check here. I don't have it in the calendar yet, but their summer match program will be taking place. And we'll talk to Dan Streeter about it and find out what it means for the rescue ministries and how they've been doing in terms of occupancy and all of that. So that'll be coming up in the very, very near future. I think it's another week or two, if I'm not mistaken. And we'll get on board with them. Take a break and then come back with more calls.
Hometown feel and
All right, we're back with you to the phones. Gene's in Bay City. Good morning, Gene. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
There's so much going on right now. We are sending our wounded troops from Iran to a hospital in Germany. Yesterday they said we're sending a huge group of doctors and nurses and technicians to that hospital in Germany. It just sounds like things are getting worse and worse and worse. And then the Secretary of War asking for billions and billions of more dollars. Isn't there some way that we can stop this before we end up with troops on the ground?
Yeah, next election you vote somebody else in.
A lot of people could be dead by then.
Well, that's the way the system works.
If Trump were to have a heart attack or something and Vance took over, do you think Vance would stop the war?
Don't know. Don't know. I guess I really can't tell you. I don't know. I have no idea.
Does this worry you as much as it worries a lot of other people?
What worries me is what I've said from the beginning. I did not object to going into Iran because they have been a nasty player on the world scene. What I wanted, though, was an end game, and I haven't seen that. That worries me.
Well, you know, Trump, when he was running, he was going to be the Nobel Prize winner because of peace winner. And here we are in this mess. Well, anyway, that's my worry and opinion for today. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Gene. 989-752-6111 is the number to call. You talk about, listen, they're already doing polls on the presidential race coming up in 2 years, right? 2.5 years. The newest poll, and it's way too early to know how it's all going to come out. But the newest poll from Emerson College shows that if the election were today, it would be former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who lives here in Michigan, running against J.D. Vance. Those would be the two who would theoretically win their primaries and move on from there. Of course, those primaries are going to be interesting because depending on the poll you read, results are very different. Some polls for Democrats, for example, have found Ocasio-Cortez leading, Newsom leading. Republicans, pretty much Vance and Rubio top the polls. DeSantis comes in third. And you know what? It's too early. But it's all over the place. I mean, I open up the stuff I do and the research I do, and there they are, polls on the presidential race. 10:51 here on WSGW. John is in Freeland. John, good morning to you.
Hey, Art. How you doing today?
Doing well. Hope you are.
Yeah, I am. Hey, I'm wondering if when you get one of your state representatives on there, if you can ask them a question, because I really don't know what the answer is in regarding solar farms and this renewable energy. Why can't, instead of coming out into the country or rural areas and building these massive sites, putting in all this infrastructure, why can't they have some sort of either tax incentive or whatever to put them in, like in some of these dilapidated areas of, Flint, Saginaw, or, some other place. They have the infrastructure there. They have the trucking, it'd be a lot closer. They're not.
Well, it would take a pretty big footprint because these data centers occupy a pretty good footprint, and you have considerations such as electric generation. They have to be able to build their own generation facilities.
Sure.
They have to have a way of water cooling these plants. So there's a lot of infrastructure that goes into it. Now, I certainly would not be against that if it were feasible. And I don't know what the feasibility is, but that's an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be renewing an area that needs renewal.
Yeah, and again, if it has the kind of infrastructure you need to build a data center, then I'd say yeah. But again, I don't know. So I will ask.
Yeah, and if you can do that. And the other thing I was thinking about too is some of these medians in between the highways and clearways and stuff like that, they're just empty spaces. Put some solar panels on there. I mean, when I drive down I-75, I look over at the GM place. They got them in some areas that they're just not using, and some of these medians are, they're pretty wide.
Well, it's interesting. The old Saginaw Steering Gear Division now next year has that big solar array out there.
Yeah, yep.
You know what that footprint was before it was a solar array?
No.
That used to be where the coal piles were that fed the power plant. So they've exchanged one for another.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. So there's some of these areas, and they're just not being used, and they're, you see it all. Yeah. Industry changes. I get it. Things change, but to just kind of give up on that area. You know, it might be whatever, a super fund, but you could definitely put solar panels or whatever you wanted there, you know.
Well, to an extent. You still have to build the infrastructure for it, but yes.
Yeah. So,
I mean, they are going to,
anyway,
for example, at reusing property. From what I understand, the Carnwettig facility up in Bay City area, where they took down the old coal plants, are now going to be a solar farm.
Yeah,
so it's good reuse.
I think so too. You know, and I just, you know, out here in Freeland, we're a rural community, and you know, we've had HFC come in down the road from us, and boy, oh boy, the traffic, and now you're talking whole bunch more people coming out here, which I'm for people having jobs.
Yeah, but now ask yourself this: where else are you going to put facilities that big?
I agree. I just think we need to really look at, like I said, some of these areas that are just kind of bummed out, you know, and, you know, is that possible? And maybe they did, you know, I don't know. Maybe they did, but I just, you know, I read around and I hear the news on the state, and it's nothing but, you know, either they can scale them down. I don't know. I don't know if it's worth doing that. If you can scale them down to a point where it's not such a huge facility, but, you know, like they're talking like these small nuclear plants or whatever, you know.
It's the amount of data and the amount of servers they need that creates that space need. They're huge. They're huge operations. And we've just seen the beginning. We've just seen the beginning.
Oh, yep.
All right.
Yeah, and even down like, and even like down Detroit, you know, some of the old areas that are just burned out, you know. But, yeah, anyway.
All right, Dave, appreciate it. Thanks, John.
Yep.
Have a great one.
Take care.
Bye-bye now. All right, that's going to do it for calls today on the Art Lewis Show. We thank you. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll tell you what's ahead on Focus coming up right after this.
Hi, I'm Kate.
All right, that'll do it for the Art Lewis Show for this Friday. Thanks for being with us. Coming up on Focus, we're going to learn about bone-jacked vintage apparel and a big music festival coming up, too. All of that is ahead this morning. Before that, news from ABC and the local report with Michael Perchip. We'll be back with Focus right after the news.
Broadcasting from the